Well, I think you have made it to potentially the last screencast in this introduction to the course website and syllabus section. So congratulations. We're still talking about, however, the CIE 404 Issues and Institutions in International Educational Development class. My name is Alex Wiseman. I'm the professor for the class. We are now turning our attention to the textbooks and reading resources. This is a class that is going to rely more on actual books for the readings than it will on articles. And so you have a 4-book list of required texts, and we will be reading all or most of each of these. So purchasing your own copy, even if it's a used and worn copy, is highly recommended. You'll see that we're starting with one, or at least the first one that's listed here is one that is a bigger topic. It's about constructing world culture and looking at international non-governmental organizations, so INGOs, since 1875, and obviously this was published in 1999. So it's a few years old. It's more than a few years. It's like 15 years old at this point. But it still does a really nice job of looking at how international non-governmental organizations developed over the 20th century. And it takes a really, I think, important and interesting theoretical approach to thinking about how INGOs have influenced policy and practice, not just in education, but in a lot of different fields in general, worldwide. So we'll be looking at that. I like this book quite a bit. I've used it before. I am a fan of the way that they frame it. Although you don't have to be a fan, but at least you should understand the approach they're taking. Next, we're going to be looking at Dambisa Moyo's Dead Aid: Why Aid is Not Working and How There is a Better Way for Africa. Dambisa Moyo actually came to Lehigh a couple of years ago and spoke when this book was first coming out. So obviously that was around 2010. She talked about this book, and she talked about some of her perspectives, and I think she provides a nice contrast to some of the things that we'll be probably saying in class. She definitely comes more from the development and aid world than we do in CIE. And so her perspective is going to be, I think, very helpful for us in thinking about what development and education are, how they are linked together, what the impact of development and aid is on communities more broadly speaking. She is not an educationist. She is not a researcher. So you're not going to find a specific comparative and international education approach. But what you will find are some really interesting and, quite frankly, in many ways controversial approaches to thinking about aid, development, and, in our case, education. We'll also be looking at this book by Bey, A Long Way Gone, Memoirs of a Boy Soldier. Again, a little older book, but a really interesting one, and one that is more of a novel than a textbook. In fact, this was so popular when it came out, I suspect that some of you have already read this book, but maybe not for a class, maybe just because you were interested in reading it. I think you'll find it fascinating, and it's one way for us to think about the impact of development and aid on youth, especially in conflict and post-conflict situations. That's going to be really important for us to understand as we're moving through this course. And then finally we have a book by Amy Stambach. She writes about how religion, and especially the American evangelical strain of Christianity, and how it has impacted children, youth, and education in East Africa. And she comes from it from an anthropologist perspective, a very interesting approach. She herself was a part of the types of schools that she is going to be critiquing and describing in her book. So you'll get not just a researcher's sort of empirical account, but you get an insider's account as well. Very interesting because it mixes religion with education and sees how that impacts development and aid. All right, let me point out that if you can, you should get these books. You should own them. I want you to have them. I think they'll be helpful for your library as you mature as a scholar and as a professional in the field. So please find a way to get a copy of these books. But there will, from time to time, be other readings required. When possible, I will provide a link to those readings actually in the syllabus. But if there is no link, then they are probably available either online via the internet like Google Scholar or through the Lehigh Library online databases, in particular JSTOR and ERIC. You should be able to get any of the additional required readings at no charge. If you're ever looking for something and you come to a site that says you have to pay $30 to download an article, you've gotten to the wrong spot, right? What you do need to do, however, is make sure that you are finding the readings and getting a copy of them in advance enough that you're not scrambling at the last minute before class. So if you need to request something via interlibrary loan or via Palsy or some other way, it is, and I'm going to highlight this, your responsibility to find and or download copies of the readings in advance of the class so that you can do the reading and be prepared for class discussion. Do not wait to find the readings. Get them as soon as possible for the whole semester. In fact, when you're done with this video, get them now. Now. I've also had classes in the past that have worked together and they've split it up and they've just said, I'll take weeks 1 through 3, you take 4 through 6, and then they'll each be responsible for getting all of the readings that aren't provided in the required text that people should have and making sure that they're scanned or available electronically online. So you can do it that way as well. Okay, let's take a quick look at the class topics and reading assignments. You'll see that there is a topic for each week. The first week we're going to be talking about human rights and the expansion of mass education. You have 3 readings that are required. The UN Declaration of Human Rights, Article 26. It's very short, won't take you long. The David Suarez chapter from a book that I edited, that you can get this. The book is actually available in the Lehigh Library, so you can get a copy of it there if you're on campus. If you're off campus, you can request an electronic copy of it, and I think the library will provide that without any problem. And then this Benovat and Resnick chapter is available online at this website for immediate download. Then we get into the different parts of the class, and you'll see that there are 3 parts. Part 1 is Education and Global Institutions, and there is a description of what this part is about, followed by the required readings. Whenever there is a class activity or assignment that I want to highlight, it will be in this blue box. So on September 11th, the topics for your group projects for your website are going to be selected and groups assigned. For following weeks, you can see that this discussion leader line starts to pop up. You see how that pops up at the end there? These are weeks when you are able to volunteer to be the discussion leader and to lead the discussion activity. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're looking at the readings for that week and that those are readings that you would like to lead the discussion on. And remember that you're also writing a blog post on those readings that you will post before that class so that your classmates can take a look at it and be oriented for your discussion activity. Take a look at these weeks that have a discussion leader line and see which one is your first choice, which one is your second choice, because it's not guaranteed all of you will get your first choice. Part 2 of the class is on development aid and education. Again, there's a description of what this part is about right there. You're welcome to take a look at that. You'll again see that if there is a class activity or assignment that I would like to highlight, for example, on October 9th, your peer group feedback on website outlines is due today. You'll be actually giving each other feedback. I'm going to ask you to do it in a written format, so it'll be fairly straightforward. You'll be doing that on the website. And then you'll also notice that the discussion leader things continue to pop up. All right, so take a look at that. Lastly, we have culture and conflict, our 3rd part of the course. Again, described here, and again, look for what's due when, and when you want to be a discussion leader, when the assignments are due, when you're doing what. And you'll see that the readings are relatively well, they look light because they're not very long citations, but the pages are a little longer. We'll be reading half of this book essentially on one day and half on another day. Right? So because we're reading books, you'll see that they're divided that way. And then half of the Amy Stambach book and then the other half there. Finally, on December 4th, you will have your final website group presentations. They'll be due in class that day. You'll also be doing team collaboration evaluations. I'll hand those out or I'll email them to you. You'll get them some way, and those will be due then as well. Remember that at the very end of the syllabus I said there was a recommended but not required way that you could prepare for class. That's using these weekly reading memos. If it helps you, great. If it doesn't help you, don't use it. It's just there for your use, whether you want to or not. Okay, that's our syllabus. If you have questions, send me an email. If you have the opportunity to do some reading before class starts, you know what to read. You know what the midterm essay questions are. You know what the assignments are. You have a lot of time to prepare. Now, I want you to enjoy the several months that are available before the class officially starts. But hopefully you're all taking a look at this and it's rattling around in your head, and so you'll be raring to go when we come together for our very first class of CIE 404, Issues and Institutions in International Educational Development. I am looking forward to seeing you then.